And welcome to another exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. I'm your host, Michael, and I am joined tonight with a guest. I will, in full disclosure, say I am super excited to have on the show. I've actually been wanting to ask him on the show earlier, but I chickened myself out, so I'll own that. But I finally asked, and he was gracious enough to come on, and so I am going to allow my guest to introduce himself, as I'm sure many of you recognize him. And so I don't want to misquote something and do him misjustice. So I'm going to turn it over to the one, the only, the incredible paranormalist, David Merlin.
Thanks so much, Michael. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome, and thank you for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Have
So,
some fun tonight.
oh yeah. So how did you start and decide, there's no paranormalist. I'm going to do it.
Well, I started out in the field of magic as a close-up magician. It was just kind of a hobby when I was many years ago. I actually started in entertainment. I was a musician, believe it or not. I played drums and guitar from the time I was like 12 years old to now. And I was actually playing in bar bands, at the age of 17, playing drums. So music still, I still love music and create, I actually create my own music and soundtracks and stuff. But I think I saw how the music industry was and the competition, and I knew I loved, entertainment, and I liked being on stage and being in front of the people. And then I got into the art of magic, close-up magic, and so that kind of evolved from close-up magic into the big stage illusions. I also have design and building skills, so I was able to, design and build and create my own props. So that's a big bonus when you're in the world of magic, because some of this stuff can be so expensive. When you see act like David Copperfield or Chris Angel or somebody on television, these things are super expensive. But being the way my mind works, I'd never been to school for drafting or engineering, but I was always able to just get these ideas in my head, put them on paper, and then go into the shop and actually build them. So I started getting into illusion and started doing, I went from doing birthday parties to doing comedy clubs, and I would do corporate events, things like that. And I got discovered by a friend of mine in a comedy club in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm actually from a town called Sylacauga, Alabama. Just outside of Birmingham, about 40 miles east. And Sylacauga is the home of Jim Nabors, Gomer Pyle. My mom actually was friends with Jim's sister. And we have the whitest, purest marble in the world mined here in this little town. And it's the only place on Earth that a person has been struck by a meteorite. So that's a little tidbit of information.
That's actually amazing. And I will say, I've seen Jim Nabors on TV and everything, and It always amazes me when I see him as Gomer Pyle and
Mm-hmm.
other roles, and then I hear him sing, and I'm like,
Yeah.
how? How is this voice coming from that voice? It's like, wow. And yeah,
Yeah.
everyone, you'll have to excuse my dogs. They apparently found a squirrel.
Yeah. I got one over here asleep next to me. But yeah, yeah, Jim. You know, when you see him on those shows, you know, he really did have that Southern accent. You know, like a really thick. You know, you can tell I got a Southern accent, but Jim had a really thick Southern accent. And as time went on, you know, when he moved to California and then moved to Hawaii, he slowly lost that, and just a totally different speech pattern then. And but yeah, yeah, his voice was incredible. You know, you wouldn't think when you would hear him talk that kind of, you know, singing voice could come out, but it did. He was really good.
Must be something in the water there because you get Jim Nabors and David Merlin.
Yeah, and from a town of about 13,000, I think that's our population. Yeah, you know, nobody did what I do. So, and there's probably very few in the state of Alabama that even do anything, you know, close to what I do. But when I can't remember the age exactly when it was, but in 1995, I had met someone when I was performing at a comedy club in Birmingham called the Stardome. It's like one of the biggest comedy clubs in the country. I mean, big stage, not your normal comedy club. This one had a really big stage where I could do big illusions. And I met a guy that came into town performing named Ray Wold. And he was the world's top fire artist. And he was known as the pyrotechnic madman. And he had just come off the David Letterman show. And back then, you know, the David Letterman show and Leno was really big. You would have anywhere from 10 to 12 million viewers back then. It's nothing like that with talk shows now late at night. You know, you're lucky if you get 500,000, I've heard. But anyway, Ray saw what I did, and he lived in San Diego. He left and went back to San Diego after the shows, and he called me up about a month later, and he said, "Hey, would you be interested in coming out here to California and help me design and build some like fire illusions for, you know, for shows?" And he did a lot of television shows, like especially overseas, and the all the stuff he did with the fire and pyro was just, you know, they love it overseas. Anything crazy, all that, you know, Asian television market, Spanish television market. So I said, sure. He said, yeah, could you maybe come out for, you know, just a couple of months and we'll, you know, knock out a few props. And I said, yeah, let's do it. I had never been to California. First time I went out west that far was Vegas in '93, just to see a lot of magic shows and stuff. But so I'm a young guy traveling cross country and get out there, and we start, you know, building stuff and become really, really good friends. And before you know it, that 8 weeks turned into like 2 years that I'm out there. So I started working with him, you know, full time. We did we did Letterman show a couple more times. We did stuff like Comic Relief out in Hollywood, Comedy Central. We were doing overseas television shows. We were doing like NBA and college basketball halftime shows, you know, for thousands of people. We even did we did one show for the San Diego Padres where we did this fire and pyro thing during their fireworks spectacle, yeah, on 4th of July, you know, back in '95 or '96. And so I did that for a couple of years, and I even I don't you probably don't remember an old TV show called Renegade. I was on that show. I got
Oh
chosen for
yeah.
was on one of the episodes of that, just kind of background extra. And they were asking me, they were also shooting another show out there, which Renegade had that actor Lorenzo Lamas. um, there was another show called High Tide out there with Rick Springfield, And I had a chance to be on that. And another show they shot was called Silk Stockings. So
I remember that.
yeah, there were some old TV shows. So I had a chance to do those shows, but we were always so busy, I had to turn them down. So I didn't get into the film industry right then. I probably regret it now, because there was all kind of opportunities, but we were performing and traveling, and gosh, I mean, we went everywhere. So I did that stuff with him for a couple of years, and I decided that I wanted to come back to Alabama, build an all new show for myself, and then, which was good, because about a year later, he gets chosen to be in the show called O in Las Vegas at the Bellagio. It's a big, huge Cirque du Soleil production. I don't know. Some of your viewers have probably been there and seen it. It's
I
probably,
have.
yeah, it was probably one of the greatest shows on earth, with the water and the stage going into water. If you've been there, you probably saw a guy setting himself on fire,
Yeah.
and that was Ray. So he was like the highest paid person in all of the Cirque shows, throughout the world, and he's still with the show to this day. He's got to be the longest running performer with them. But so as soon as Ray started doing his thing, I started doing my thing, and then I ended up moving to Las Vegas, working with Ray again on some other projects. And right around 2000, I think it was, and I was working with another guy that he was a special effects artist that did a lot of movies and TV commercials. So I was doing stuff like that with him, and we were in San Diego. I was performing for the Acura car show, huge event at the San Diego Convention Hall. And after the event was over, the big producer of that event came up to me and said, "Hey, I've got this project coming up in about 3 weeks, and I'm panicked because it's something that's kind of out of my alley." And I said, "What is it?" He goes, "Well, I got to put together this presentation for this producer to pitch a theme park idea at Universal Studios." And I said, "Well, okay, what's it about?" He goes, "Well, there's 3 books out right now, and there's going to be a 4th book coming out. I think it was probably 2 or 3 months later." And he said, "This is a book of which they think it's going to be huge. They're going to make movies. Spielberg's involved with it." And I said, "I hadn't heard anything about it." And he goes, "Well, it's called Harry Potter." And I'm like, "I've never heard of it." So this was in 2000, so back then I had not heard of it. So I had to go out and get the first 3 books and just try to skim through them the best I could to kind of learn about, the characters and what it was all about. And then I had 3 weeks to prepare this magical presentation around this presenter there at Universal Studios Hollywood. They wanted all these magical things happening around him as he's speaking and pitching the idea for the wizarding world of Harry Potter, so that it wouldn't be boring. They wanted stuff happening, really magical stuff. So we were working anywhere from 12 to 15 hours a day for 3 weeks with no days off to get this prepared. And I had had an illusion builder that David Copperfield uses. He was helping me build a couple of props. I was building props. I had so many people doing different things so we could get it all together, in record time. So we were working up to, like to the last minute, really. And then the day before that we got to do this presentation, we go out to LA, and then the next day we get up, we get to Universal, and we got to go on a sound stage. think it was next to the Terminator attraction. It was a smaller soundstage. You get all this stuff set up, and Spielberg was supposed to be there for this, this big pitch, because at the time he was going to be in charge of the Harry Potter movies. And but anyway, Spielberg had some kind of emergency surgery just days before we did it. I can't remember what it was, if it was an appendix or what it was. I need to go online and see if I can find it. But he didn't get to show up. So, but all the executives from Universal and Warner Brothers and some people from DreamWorks were there. So it was a big pitch for. There's probably only 100 people there, but these were like, the big wheels of these studios, and the money people to to make stuff happen, and the people that actually had just put in the Jurassic Park attraction there. And but anyway, after that was over, come to find out, Spielberg passed on Harry Potter because he wanted the kid. Is his name Haley Joel Osment?
Haley Joel Osment, yeah,
from The Sixth Sense. He wanted him to be Harry Potter. Well, J.K. Rowling, the author, said, absolutely not. Everybody in this movie's got to be, from the UK. They wanted, to be authentic. So he goes, well, if I can't have my guy, I'm going to pass. So he went and did the movie AI back then. If you remember that film. But him and Haley made that film together. And I'm sure he's regretting, passing on Harry Potter, because that's probably the biggest film, series of all time.
Yeah, I think that does rival Star Wars.
Yeah. Star Wars probably there at the top, and then probably right in there, I would say Harry Potter, with the amount of movies that they did. I think like probably Star Wars and Avatar probably made more money on the big films, but Harry Potter, gosh, how many was it? Was it 7 or 8 films?
Well, the last one was 2 parts, so technically 7, but there was 8 films.
Yeah.
And then she was supposed to do another one, but somebody apparently leaked a page of the script or the book, and she's like, nope, I'm canceling it. And now I heard she might be looking into it again.
Yeah, I wish they would. I was a big fan. It's like I had no clue what it was at first, and then got into it, and then really, really loved it. And I always, take my niece every year to Universal there in Orlando, which we're going in another week, and check out the Harry Potter stuff. And they're building another theme park down there, Epic Universe, and it's going to have the Ministry of Magic in this park by Universal, and it's also going to have the Universal Monsters, a whole section on that. So can't wait to see that. I think it opens in May, but we probably won't go till, I'm thinking, this time next year. Let all the crowds die down.
Right, that's smart. And I will say that's one of the things when I was watching your posts on Facebook and social media is how you take your family with you places and your dog with you, and I'm like, this is a down to earth guy.
Oh yeah.
Who I think is really cool that he does this, because you're on TV, you're doing all this stuff, you could easily be like, oh yeah, I'm Mr. So and so, but instead you're like, hey, I'm taking my family with me. And so I thought that was really beautiful, so I wanted to mention that to you and say, I love that you do that.
Yeah, man. I don't have any kids of my own, because I always travel, and still single right now. So maybe one day, get married again. But yeah, I take my niece. She's autistic, so I take her everywhere. She's been to Las Vegas a couple times, to California, several trips to Savannah, doing the ghost tours, all that. Orlando, there's no telling how many times. Probably, I don't know, 6 trips down there. So we try to go every year. I think it's been several years now, because COVID hit, and back when COVID hit, at the time my mom was really down and out with her health, and so I took several years off of performing pretty much. I would do shows occasionally, but she got really bad and I didn't want to see her going to nursing home. So I said, I'm going to take time off and look after my mom. That's what I did. And then she passed away over a year and a half ago. So now I'm able to, get back out there and perform again. And which I've did a lot of television shows throughout the years. Did stuff like David Letterman a couple times, Comedy Central, did America's Got Talent, did Germany's Got Talent. I did Penn Teller's Fool Us, and last year I was on the Huckabee Show out of Nashville. That was a lot of fun. So I'm always creating new things and looking to maybe do some more television this next year.
Well, my condolences about the loss of your mom. I lost my dad, sounds like around the same time, so I know how it feels.
Yeah, lost my dad like 20 years ago or 21 years ago. And then with her, yeah, that's rough, you lose your mom. But I felt it was important just to take that time off and, look after her. And, because I knew if I didn't, I would just regret it for the rest of my life. So I'm glad I did. So.
Right. And you got to create memories. And that's the other thing, too, with your niece is you get to create these memories. And she's getting experiences most people dream about. And it's like, yeah. And it's just so humbling to look at how you're like, oh, yeah, we did this. Look at where you're not look at we are. Look what we're doing. It's more like you're just like, yeah, we just happen to be here. So we're, just letting you know we're checking this out.
Yeah,
So
we
I
suck.
like how you just make it so personable and you're not like caught up in the fame, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, which, I don't look at myself as, a celebrity by any means. I've worked with a lot of celebrities over the years. And then sometimes you'll meet some of them that you're like pleasantly surprised. And then sometimes you'll meet them and you go, they're not like I thought they would be. And it's not as much fun, but there's been occasions, when I moved to San Diego, one of our dancers in one of our shows, her name was Marissa, and she was Hispanic, real pretty girl. And she said, "Oh, we're going to do a show in San Diego." And she goes, "Oh, my brother's going to come to the show." I'm like, "Oh, great!" And little did I know, her brother was Mario Lopez.
Really?
Yeah. And then when I looked at her, looked at him, I'm like, "Okay, yep, they look alike." So. She was super nice, and so was he. He's very humble, and their mom. I think their mom had them very grounded. And then I met Dan Aykroyd, John Goodman when I was doing comic relief back in '96. I can't believe how long it's been. So back in those days, I had just been in California, maybe less than a year, and all of a sudden I'm meeting all these celebrities, and it's like to come from Alabama, a hick town, and then you're sitting in a green room with all these actors that you've watched, in movies and television shows. It was pretty wild. And so, you had to kind of act like you're not starstruck, and be cool. And
Where'd you find the courage to go through with it? Because I would feel like if I was in your situation, seeing all these like people that are in film and everything, I'd be like, you know what? I think I'm gonna go visit that door and yeah, there's no way I'm landing anything here.
once you start getting around them and you can kind of come down to earth and realize that they're just people like we are. And most of them just want to have normal conversation, and they're not all into the Hollywood hype. You got some that probably are, that think they're God's gift, but I'm pretty lucky. I've, met and worked with a lot of them that were super, super nice.
Well,
So I
that's
was lucky.
good. And I actually have a question for you that I'm wondering if you've ever even been asked.
Okay.
And that is, what is the euphoric moment when you were performing, whether on stage or on TV, that you said, "Oh my God, I made it"?
Um, Probably the first time I was on the David Letterman show, because, I watched that show a lot, through the years. And then all of a sudden you're there setting up in the Ed Sullivan Theater. You're like, the Beatles. This is where the Beatles were on stage, right where I'm standing. So it was just kind of surreal. And then you're, looking in the theater, and it's not a huge theater like you would think it is. It's very intimate theater, but just the pressure of knowing you're going to be seen by 12 million people, which they tape it during the day and then they play it at night. So it was, I could feel the pressure a little bit, but we were very prepared of what we were going to do, and it went great. Letterman loved it, and then of course he invited us back the very next year. So it was easier the second time, but the first time, I will say, and the theater is super cold back then. Probably some of your listeners have heard the tales that he would keep the temperature in the 50s in that theater, and that's true. It was cold in there. Most of the people, when you would see them out sitting out in the audience, they had on jackets, and I never did really realize it till I got there, and I'm like, wow, I'm on stage setting up, and I'm like, it's cold in here, and but I heard it was because he didn't want to sweat on camera. So
I
that's,
was wondering if it was because of the lights.
I guess the lights, but even with those lights on, I didn't feel any heat. I mean, it was cold in there, but yeah, that was a great experience. That was the most surreal moment probably, and of course backstage at Comic Relief, just with, you know, there must have been 30 celebrities, in one area. I had a dressing room, next to Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia. So, and I'm sharing
Oh,
a dressing room with Bobcat Goldthwait.
I remember him.
Yeah, he's been in some stuff. He was in Scrooged with Bill Murray. Great comic. He's like one of these loud, crazy comics on stage, and then when you meet him in person, he's like very quiet and very shy. And Gilbert Gottfried was the same way. When that camera turned on, Gilbert, the eyes squint, the teeth come out. But then when you're just, one on one, he's just, very calm and shy, humble. So it's amazing how a lot of comics are like that.
Yeah, and I'm curious, and we talked about it a little bit behind before we came on, and you had mentioned a UFO experience. Do you feel like that experience has influenced any of your designs or any of your illusions that you may have had?
Um, well, in magic, I was doing kind of a mainstream kind of magic show, like a David Copperfield kind of thing for many years. And in 97, when we were in Temecula, California, Ray, the fire guy that I worked with, he had a house in San Diego, but he also had a cabin up in Temecula, California. It's about an hour and a half northeast of San Diego. It's up in the mountains. And I mean, from Temecula, it was probably a 30-minute drive to get there, to go 20 miles up in the hills. And his cabin was about at a 3,000-foot elevation. So we would go up there to do our like fire and pyro stuff to test things out. We didn't do it in the summer because, in California, the wildfires are, nuts out there. So we would do it like when it was pretty cold. And so we were going to be going on Letterman for the second time. And we're also going on this show called Viva Variety that was on Comedy Central. It was hosted by Thomas Lennon, the actor. If you saw him, you know exactly who he is. He's been in a lot of movies.
Right.
We were up there setting up this big stunt we were going to do, and Ray had the cabin he had was really small, and when you come out the back porch, you're looking straight out at the valley. Behind you was like these, I mean, gigantic mountains, covered in snow. Those mountains probably a couple of miles high. They were big ones. Off to my right was about 100 yards. Nah, it wasn't that far. Maybe 50 yards away was this big gigantic boulder, and we had an area that was cleared off out in front of it, and it was great for shooting videos. What we'd do is take these big halogen lights, the trees with 2 lights. We'd have 3 trees. We'd put them kind of in a semicircle on that boulder, and we would shoot all our fire and pyro stuff out in front of it. It just made a great backdrop. And so we got the stuff set up for the night, because we shoot at night because the fire and stuff looks much better at night, and all the the fireworks and the gerbs and stuff. So we're setting up. Then we go in the house. We're setting up all the pyro stuff we're going to be using, and we've almost got it ready. And it's probably about 8 o'clock at this time, and the sun's been down at that time probably since 5:30. And Ray says, "Yeah, why don't you go make sure we got the camera ready to go and everything's ready, and we're going to shoot, get it done, and head back to San Diego." So that was the plan. Try to hopefully get back before midnight. So I said, "All right." So I walk out, and I just come out onto the little porch and looked out, and the moon was not out that night. So we were so far out that all the stars were out, not a cloud in the sky. And I just happened to look over kind of to my left, and I saw like a bright light, and I thought it was just like an airliner coming out of San Diego. And there was a couple of hilltops over there. So I saw the light like coming across the top of one hilltop, and then it got to a second hilltop and it stopped. And I thought, well, that's so, and I'm looking at it and it's just hovering. Then it goes back to the first position. And I thought, well, that's really weird, because I'm thinking, well, it can't be a plane. It's not a helicopter, because I don't hear any rotor blades turning. And up there, it's so quiet. I mean, there was hardly anybody that lived up there. Very isolated area. So I yell into the cabin for Ray. He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Hey, come out here and look at this." He said, "What is it?" I said, "You got to come see this." So as soon as Ray opens the door and the light kind of escapes out of the cabin, that thing just kind of drops behind the hill. And I'm just kind of like stunned, like, "All right, Ray, you're not going to believe this, but there was something up in the sky and it's moving around. And as soon as you open that door, that thing ducked behind that hill." And I'm just estimating the thing was probably at least a mile away. Maybe it could have been a little bit more. The size of the light, I would say, I mean, you know how big the evening star is. I would say it's probably illuminated, 3 times that size, and more of like not a white color. I would say like an amber type color, like some street lights are. Almost kind of a yellowish red tone. Very different from a star. And so when it drops, we're sitting there talking about it and looking for it again. And he said, "Well, my neighbor that lives about, a quarter mile back there said he's seen a lot of things up in the skies out here." Because his neighbor lived in an Airstream thing, just on the same property pretty much. by himself. So he said he's seen a lot of things. Anyway, so we got to get moving. So Ray goes back inside and he's finishing up, and I'm still stunned looking over there. So I start to walk toward the boulder where we're all set up. Then I just happen to look straight out across the valley now. And there it is again. This time it's just over the valley. It's just hovering. And so it went from way over here to way over here, like quickly. I didn't even see it move. It's just like when I started, walking that way, and then I turned back. I think I looked back again, didn't see anything. That's when I turned and saw it over the valley. And then I was amazed because I didn't know what it was, because it was completely silent. And then I thought, I got a camera over there. That was going through my mind. If I could get this on film. And then that thing, all of a sudden, it does like a V, just kind of shoot, shoot. And then I'm just like, wow, that's the most incredible thing I've ever seen. And it was kind of quick the way it did it. Just kind of shoot, shoot. And like I said, I don't know how far away it was. I'm going to estimate it could have been up to 2 miles away. It's just hard to say. I don't know how big it was. But then I said, all right, I'm going to get this thing on film. So I start to walk, and I'm keeping my eyes on the thing. And then all of a sudden, lights go out, like somebody turned the light switch off. Never saw it again. It's gone. So I don't know if it was still there or just kind of into another dimension. I have no clue. But
It seems like it was meant just for you.
Well, whatever it was, evidently, we had up there would have been no light normally, but with it all, we had those 3 trees, those 6, I forgot how many watts were on these halogen lights, but that whole boulder was lit up. I mean, you could have saw it, from way up in the air. So whatever it was probably checking out, what is that light? Where is that coming from? What is that? And then by me telling Ray to come out, and it's almost like that thing hid as soon as I was trying to get another set of eyes on it. And then I'm looking like a fool, because he doesn't see it. But anyway, from that moment on, I had always been interested and started reading up on it. Just getting all the information on, UFOs, and, finding out about Area 51 and Bob Lazar and Travis Walton, all these stories. And then years later, like a few years ago, I make friends with Art Bell. So that was really cool, because Art was actually interested in my paranormal show idea. And because I used to, when I would travel cross country, I would hear Art on the radio and coast to coast, late at night, because I was always driving, usually from one city to another. And Art was really cool. He's really humble. I'll never forget when I had sent him an email out of the blue about my paranormal show. And maybe this was when he had, I think it was Dark Matter was on at that time, or Midnight in the Desert. I can't remember. And I just sent him an email, was going to tell him about what kind of show I'm planning on doing. And I thought, I'll probably never hear from him. And it probably wasn't 2 days, I get a phone call, and I looked on my phone, and it was a 702 number, which is Las Vegas. And I thought, well, that's my friend Ray. And I'm like, hey, Ray, what's going on? And then the voice goes, this is Art. And that's when I knew it was Art Bell. And then so I started a friendship. And then a year later, he passes away. Never saw it coming. And he was so interested in the paranormal show idea, because we talked about maybe doing a show where he actually got to come out and meet the fans, and tell stories on stage. And it was, we hadn't really put it into a contract or anything. It was just in the talks, but he sounded kind of excited about it. and he had some girl she was doing the radio show at that time, Heather Wade, and he was kind of backing off. He had gotten back into the radio on the internet because at this time he was telling everybody how streaming is going to be the new thing, and podcast, and even me, I was skeptical, and I was like, well, Art, I don't know. I think terrestrial radio is still the way to go. And he goes, no, it's streaming, I promise you. And I think Joe Rogan has proved him right.
Yeah, and it's amazing the connections and how things just happen to fall in and just
never saw that one coming.
No.
And yeah, I was devastated. When he passed away, I'm like, wow, that I was thinking we would have had so much fun doing this project. And then, of course, later on, COVID hits and all that, and that really messed up a lot of things that I had planned on doing. Things that got canceled. That whole COVID thing really, I'm sure it messed up a lot of people's careers.
Oh yeah, but on the bright side of it, if you could ever find one, you have projects that are coming up. Like I remember seeing something on Facebook about a movie that you were promoting.
As of right now, that particular project is not happening. But I am in the future looking to do something myself where I have all creative control with it. I think that's the best way to go, and to do my own independent film, and then actually, sell it to a distributor. So that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. I've got a script in mind, the whole storyline. I'm going to do the music soundtrack, since I'm a musician, be in the film, I'll have complete creative control on it. So it's going to be more of a ghostly type thing. So,
well, if you need a podcaster on the show, I'll happily help out.
Which right now that's all it's on the back burner, but I am working on it. Because movies is a passion of mine, and I see so many movies out there now that are just kind of crap.
Oh yeah,
terrible storylines, terrible acting, and I want to create something good, and to show that you do not have to have a gigantic Hollywood budget to actually make a great film. I mean, look at Halloween.
Oh yeah, and the other thing too that I think is timing wise maybe in your favor is they are in a point, it seems like, in Hollywood where writers have no ideas, so they take movies that were successful in the past and go, let's give it a new cast, or let's flip the cast and make it all men instead of women, or all women instead of men. And it's like, it doesn't work.
Yeah, they're so out of touch out there now. California is not the California I lived in the mid 90s. It's completely different out there. It's Wackoville. But that's why, some of those films out there, there's so many chiefs and not enough Indians. So somebody will come up with a great idea, and then somebody go, well, let's change this. Somebody else, let's change this. And then before you know it, the film is turned into something completely different and horrible, because you've got people that they're just not creative, and they don't think logically. Like, I mean, in my mind, with everything I do, I think things out. What makes sense? What do people want to see? What seems realistic? So I'm totally convinced I can put out a great product when I do it, because everything I've done has pretty much been successful, and being able to create my own special effects and everything like that. I'd just be doing everything, to make the product the best that it can be.
And one thing I admire about what you do too, we were talking about, is you do based on audience. Audience
Yeah.
determines how it unfolds. How does that work for you, and how do you keep your composure of getting to the result of the end result you're looking for with all these anomalies out there?
Yeah. Like I said, I went to doing a paranormal show, I guess maybe 6 years ago. It was pre-COVID when I had it all um, in line. And my show it involves, elements of telekinesis, telepathy, mind reading, predictions, and ghosts. And I wanted the whole show not to be about something like you see some magicians come out, and they have an assistant with them, and they do stuff with that assistant. I thought it would be better if everything in the show either happens to me, where I'm in a box or whatever, or it's happening to the audience. So the entire show is pretty much, audience participation. And if I do my full show, which is about an hour and a half, I'm probably asking 50 different people questions. There's probably some people on stage sometimes, or I'm either asking, the people in the audience. They throw a paper object around the audience, and that's the way I pick, who's going to be, involved in the experiment. So that lets you know that there's no plants, because I'm basically using everybody, especially if it's a, more intimate crowd. Sometimes there's hundreds of people, in an audience, and sometimes there might be as few as 50, for the intimate kind of thing. Like I did a museum just a few weeks ago, and we had like 60 people, and it was great. So everybody participated. And so by the end of the show, they're just like, they can't comprehend it, because they're like, well, you couldn't have any plants. They're like, because I participated, talking about them. And they said, I've seen this stuff on television, but I didn't, I thought it was all staged, fake. And so I create a great illusion. I mean, it's theater of the mind, what I do. And some of the ghost stuff that I do, there's one point in there that'll make people gasp. But it's pretty unique, and I hope to get it on the road in 2025, and do a tour. I'd love to I'd love to somehow hook up with a more known comedian to do kind of a double bill thing, so that people, they're that person's going to draw the crowd. But then if I'm opening the show and do a 45-minute set, then they kind of learn who I am and what I do, and they're going to go, wow, we weren't expecting this tonight. So give them a pleasant surprise, kind of a double whammy.
Right, and I'm curious, we've mentioned a couple times around, the ghost aspect of it. Can you tell us some about it? Or, because I don't want to give anything away. I would never ask illusionists to do that. I'm just curious, what
I'll
you're
just say,
referring to and how it works a little
uh,
bit.
I don't really post a lot of my stuff. I've got, people can go and they can find me on YouTube doing, normal kind of David Copperfield kind of things. But I don't really post any of my mentalism and the stuff I do with the people, or the ghost stuff, because I kind of like to keep it so that it's a surprise when people are there. We don't allow filming or anything like that, because we want it to be an experience. You don't want one of those things where people are just sitting there with their phones. I want them to experience it. But I do at one point in the show, like a live seance with, with the audience involved. So that's pretty cool. And I'll just say I try to conjure an apparition.
Wow. That sounds amazing to be able to do that. And it's, with the fact that it's audience driven too,
Yeah.
makes an element of it even more, because you don't really know what's coming through in that aspect because somebody may bring something and it goes, "Hey, here I am," and you're like, "Oh."
Yeah, my show is always a little bit different every time because it's based on the audience, and how they react. And uh, some people are super funny, and so my show is kind of mysterious. It's funny. I like to say amazing. It's mind-boggling for sure, and it's just really hard to comprehend. So, some of the things that you experience. So, yeah, if any of your listeners are in some cities and actually want to sponsor my show coming in, if you have ghost groups, or uh, you are friends with people that do like theater shows or dinner theater shows, I'm always open to doing different things and coming out. I did some paranormal events. I did a big Paracon in Las Vegas 3 years ago, and then a year ago I was in Connecticut. I was at Mohegan Sun Casino, and I was doing the Ed Lorraine Warren Paracon for my friends Judy and Tony Spera, and of course they had the Annabelle doll there. And I've actually been to Ed and Lorraine's house and been, like right next to Annabelle. So that was a great experience. Just me and Tony in there. That's a pretty creepy room, the artifacts room.
I can totally imagine. And I'm sitting here thinking there's one question that seems obvious that I haven't asked, and I've been trying to figure out a way to word it so it doesn't sound like the question that everybody would ask. But I'm wondering, with being the magician, illusionist, entertainer side, when you look at the paranormal, do you feel like those two go together and it was like a natural, easy fit for you to go, yeah, this paranormal stuff, kind of up my alley, and let's check this out? Or was it like a leap and you were like, I got to be convinced on this?
Well, I mean, since the UFO incident, I've been into that. Um, and then when I was around 19, I had one incident. Um, my uncle had stayed with us for a while, and he ended up passing away. And it was probably a few months later that my dad at the time, he was a lineman for Alabama Power Company. And my dad, and he was also big into hunting, and he's a lot of times, even during the week after work, he's there. Him and his friends are out hunting. They or if there's storms or anything, he was always on call. Go out and fix transformers and stuff like that, reconnect wires. So he would come back. Sometimes it might be 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. Didn't matter what time it was. If he hadn't seen me that day, he would come into my room, sit on the edge of the bed, and wake me up like, "Hey, are you awake?" Even though if I'm sound asleep, just checking on me, seeing how my day was. That's just the way he was. And so one evening he was gone, and I can't remember if it was a work call or what it was. So I had went ahead, and I think it was around 10 o'clock. I was gonna lay down, get some sleep. So I had just turned the light out, and I was just kind of, laying in bed, just kind of thinking about the day and some stuff. And then I was kind of turned sideways. And then my dad would always come sit on the side of the bed and, to shake me. And, the beds back then, I don't know if you remember, but some of them had some terrible box springs that would just, when somebody would sit on the mattress, that thing would just creak,
Oh, yeah.
And, I don't think they have that so much now, but back then, when somebody sits on the bed, you hear it and feel it. It's not like these great mattresses they have now. But anyway, I felt the bed sink down. And my dad came in the room without me knowing. So I flip over. There's nobody there, but I can feel something against my leg, and I feel it's like the mattress went down, and it's still creaking, like it's going down a little further, and I'm just like petrified, and I don't see anything. And then my room is pitch dark because I had the window kind of blocked out. So then I could feel the mattress start going back up, like somebody was getting back off of the bed. And my door's closed. I'm just like, I'm kind of in shock because I don't know what's just happened. And I kind of feel, and there's nothing there, and I'm just petrified. I mean, that was the scariest I think I've ever been in my life. I think I was around, I was probably 17 or 18. I can't remember, but that was a scary experience. And to this day, I don't know what that was. And I remember telling one of my friends, he was a musician friend of mine, real close friend. He's actually, he's like a music director, for church. And he was a band director. We played in rock bands. And then he's like the praise and worship guy at the church. And I remember years ago just telling them this story. And he said, well, he goes, when me and Katie got married, they had just got married, and they were probably married a year, and they had moved into this house. And he said they were asleep, and he wakes up in the middle of the night. I think it was 3 a.m. or something. He just kind of wakes up. He looks at the clock. They had one of those clocks that kind of the red numbers, So the room, I think, is pretty much black, except you could see into the shades just barely. You know how a room can be dark, but you can still kind of see in there. Right. So he just happens to look, and his eyes focus, and there's somebody standing at the end of the bed. All he can see is a shadow of the person. So he's just like freaked out. And then he's starting to just barely elbow his wife, Katie. And then she's like, huh? And he's like, Katie, wake up. And then as he's saying that, whoever is at the foot of the bed is starting to move around the bed toward her side. She wakes up and she's like, what? And he goes, look. And she sees this thing coming around the bed towards her. And she's petrified, and she screams to the top of her lungs. And David, same name, he jumps off the bed, runs to the light switch by the door where the hallway is, turns the light on, nothing's there. And then they both saw it. And they're both he's jumping down, he's looking under the bed, looking in the closets. They go through that. She stays in there. He goes through the house. All the windows, the doors are locked. Nothing. So to this day, their story is still the same. And these are like some of the most honest people you'd ever meet. And then I got a couple more friends, and they're both they're brothers. One's named Greg. One's name's Brian. When they were 8 and 9 years old, they lived in Mobile, Alabama. And they told me the story of when they were asleep and one of them woke up. I think Brian woke up. And I'm closer with Greg. So Brian wakes up and he sees this bluish green orb in the doorway. The door's open to the hallway. And then all of a sudden there's 3 of them. So he's like yelling for Greg real soft. Well, it's like, hey, Greg, wake up. And he's like, what is it? He goes, look. And he goes, do you see that? And then Greg is looking. He's like, yeah, what is that? and they're looking at it, and I think they move. I think they're in a triangle formation. I have to ask them again. But then all of a sudden, Greg gets scared and he screams, like "Mom!" So as soon as he screams, those orbs just down the hallway, gone. Then, 20 seconds later, here comes their mother in there and turns the light on. There's nothing there. So all the things that happened to me, and then those stories of people that I know that are really, credible people that just don't make up things. It lets me know there's something going on. I don't know. Is it ghostly? Is it demonic? Is it extraterrestrial? Who knows? Are they all interrelated? I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm one of those that I tend to, when that happens, if I don't get a dark or negative feeling from it, I'm like, not demonic. I just X that out of possibilities because I'm like, yeah, if I feel like I would feel uneasiness or something if that was the case because they can maybe personify themselves a certain way, but the energy doesn't lie, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, like what the two guys saw, I've heard other people talk about these little glowing balls. That's not the first time I've heard somebody talk about that. And the shadow thing, I've heard my friend Tony, the son-in-law Ed Lorraine, talk about these shadow people or whatever they are. So it makes you wonder, what are they? There's some people I've heard in the U.S. government that have told people like these UFOs and that they've been releasing on video the last few years. They're saying these things are not extraterrestrial, but they're things that are here and have always been here. And then some people even say these are angels and demons. So who knows?
Yeah, that's one thing I'm wondering if we'll ever know. And I know we're at the hour, so I don't know if you have time for a few more questions or if you need to get going because I know you got things tomorrow to prepare for.
Yeah, I got about 15 minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, my friend Derek, who watches the show, he has a question.
Yeah.
Is there an experience David went on that just didn't sit right with him?
I went on one of these paranormal investigations one time at someone's house, and I remember um, there was this one room when I opened the door. It's just like, um, when you get the goosebumps and your hair kind of stands up. I was looking into this giant, this big closet, and it just felt, I could just feel it, the hair on my arms, and it's just like something didn't feel right. So I don't know what that was, because I'm always, I guess I consider myself one of these people. I'm not going to say, yep, these things are real or they're not real. I'm kind of like right there on the fence post. My mind's wide open to whatever it could be. Of course, I want to see as much evidence as I can to draw a conclusion. But that one, it was just like, that was scary. And then, of course, when that thing sit on that bed, that was terrifying. I remember that so vividly. And because there's people like, you sure you weren't asleep? I said, nope. I had just laid down. A minute, and then the experience happened. And once like that, and that's the only really ghostly thing. And then the one UFO thing in 90, that was in 97. So it's been a long time since those incidents. But it's like once you experience something like that, you don't ever forget it. And
No, you don't.
it's your curiosity is there, especially when you start talking about it and other people go, well, this happened to me, like my friends, because they were like, they didn't want to tell people because they're like, people think we're crazy. But the great thing with their stories is two people saw it in each incident, you know, so that's like verification, I don't think you're going to have two people having a mass hallucination, at the same time. But,
Right.
so it's always great if more than one person experiences it. And in my case, I was by myself, of course, Ray was in the house, and then the ghostly type thing, I'm in the room alone, so you don't have anybody else to experience it. So there was times I didn't even really talk about it because I'm like, I don't want to tell people, and then they think I'm a nutcase or something. But then come to
I
find
know.
out everybody else has had experiences. I had a lady call me. This was about 5 weeks ago, something like that. And she knew that I was, into that sort of thing. And she said, listen, I've been having some strange things going in my house. And she was friends with my cousin. My cousin knew I had a great interest in this stuff. And she said, I've been hearing these voices here in my house. And I would, like, what kind of voices? And she's like, it's like a low, like somebody's talking, but you can't quite understand what they're saying. And I go, well, is it just you hearing them? She goes, no, several people have heard it. And I'm like, okay. And I said, well, I'll come up there in a couple of days. And we made, a day that I could get away. And her daughter drove about an hour to be there. And her daughter's like a professional woman. They're both like really professional ladies. So we're sitting there in the house and talking, and they both had heard these voices. And the daughter even said years prior, before she got married, because they've been in the house, I guess, 15 years, I want to say 15, 20 years. Her daughter was in her room and something blew. She could feel something breathing next to her ear with hot breath going in, and nothing's there. And then they both heard the voices several times. And then she was going to be gone, and the neighbors next door were going to come over and take care of the dogs. And they were coming in and feeding the dogs and all this kind of stuff. So the neighbors come over to feed the dogs, and the neighbors heard the voice. And also the neighbors said they locked the back door before they left, and they went back out the front, and they came back. It was later that day or the next day. They came back. The back door was unlocked. And then they heard the voices again. Her ex-boyfriend, she told him about it, and he's like, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. So the ex-boyfriend comes over. They're sitting there, and she's thinking, it ain't going to happen. He's going to think I'm a nutcase. They start hearing the voices coming from upstairs. They go upstairs, don't see anything. Then they hear the voices downstairs. They can't make it out what they're saying. It's just like a low kind of talking. And he's like, well, maybe it's some kind of toy or something, a kid's toy. And she's like, my kids have been grown, for over, 12 and 15 years. He's like, well, it's got to be a toy or something. And she's like, well, you can look around, there's no toys, there's nothing that's going to make a noise. And if it was, they had a toy, the batteries would be run out. So he even came over. I think it shook him so much. He goes, I want to come over tomorrow. He came over the next day. And it didn't happen. When he even went in there and laid in the daughter's bedroom, everything, just sitting there listening, didn't happen again. And then the night before I came over to see all this, she had heard the voices again. And she had a cabinet. Her mom used to go and collect these old dolls and stuff. And she had all these dolls in one of these glass cabinets. And she goes, I just wonder if this has got anything to do with it. Some of these dolls, came from all over the place, and they're really old. And she said, I'd just like to get them out of here. So she put them in a plastic bin. And I said, well, I'll take them with me. And that was, I guess, 5 weeks ago. And I checked with her a couple times, and she hasn't heard the voices since.
Wow. Question is, have you though?
No, I've actually got the dolls in a bin out in one of my cargo trailers with some of my magic stuff. But they were in the house, but I haven't heard anything. But yeah, her, to listen to her, and then the daughter's eyes were just getting big talking about, and then she had a work roommate that came and stayed with her for a while when she was working in Oxford, Alabama. And the roommate had an incident. I can't remember if it was with the voice or something else. I'd have to check with her again. I can't remember, but scared her to death. So don't know what it was, but she said so far nothing else has happened. And the voices had just been going on the past year and a half, but other things had been happening all through the years, like with the breathing in the daughter's ears. And gosh, I'd have to check back on some of the things that happened to her. But she was afraid to tell anybody about it, because she was even contemplating selling the house. And because she's like, is it legal for me to sell it if it's haunted? I'm like,
probably get a better deal.
Well, that's what I told her. I said, there's probably some, if it's really haunted, there's probably some investigators that would love to live in here.
Yeah. So we're approaching the time, and so I want to be respectful of that. And so, where can people find you, like you were saying, if they want to have you come to their city to do a show?
Yeah. I've got a website. It's David and Merlin, MERLIN.com. And I'm on Facebook. It's David Merlin Magic. I hadn't really pushed that page. I guess I should. I think I only got like 300 followers on there. I'm so untech savvy, but pretty soon I'm gonna try to get some stuff on, X and maybe TikTok and some different formats. But for right now, David Merlin Magic on Facebook, and I'm also David Merlin on Facebook, just my normal page, and davidmerlin.com. And there's videos and stuff there. But like I said, I don't really put all my stuff on, out there on the internet, because I like it to be a surprise.
Right, and that's the way to do it. And
then I was hoping to do some stuff with my buddy. I don't know if we got any Munsters fans out there, but I'm good friends with Eddie Munster, Butch Patrick. We were going to do some stuff together right when COVID hit, and we did a couple of events together, but hopefully we're going to do something together in the future. He's always taken his Dragula. He had a reproduction of that from the Munsters, and a Munster coach around to car shows and other events. So maybe we can do something together in the future.
that would be really cool. And so my last question for you, David, is, from all your experiences in your life, doesn't have to pertain to what we talked about tonight, but what would be a golden nugget you would want to leave the audience with?
Well, I don't know. I guess just hopefully that I can get my dream movie made in the next couple of years. That's my real passion, believe it or not, is movie making.
Very cool. And so thank you for being a guest, and thank you for coming on, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll get you on again.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, all the links that you mentioned are in the description, so everyone should be able to find you. So thank you to everyone in the chat room. And with that, I am going to, before I say it, let me make sure I'm in the right spot. I'm going to say good night, good day, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And please make sure if you watch this video, whether on YouTube or Rumble, click the like button. It does help with the algorithms. So thank you and have a wonderful evening, everyone. Bye bye.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.